founder and head of, and I'm the founder and head of Sesameed Education. Um, Tonight, our webinar topic is finding purpose in school and life. So not all of our webinars are about how to get into Harvard and Yale, right? Although we have those as well. But we at Sesameed Education, we want to provide a holistic development for our teenagers, for our next generation. So finding purpose in life is indeed part of that holistic pursuit. Tonight's speaker, as usual, will be Mr. Dexter Padiachi, our head of university guidance. I have, to those who have joined our previous webinars, Mr. Dexter is no surprise, but for those who are new to our webinars, I'll just give a very concise introduction to Mr. Dexter. Mr. Dexter is from South Africa, Johannesburg. He during his younger days was admitted to Amherst College, one of the very top liberal arts colleges in America. He had his time over there, and following that, he spent some time, with the international student body, and afterwards he returned back to Johannesburg and has been serving as the head of university guidance for the prestigious African Leadership Academy. For those who knew a little bit about the African landscape, ALA, or African Leadership Academy, is the very top boarding school over on the African continent, analogous to Phillips Exeter, Phillips Andover on the American side of things. So Mr. Dexter have had years of experience helping the top-notch students from Africa, from ALA, to get admitted into the very top universities in America, as well as UK and many other countries around the world. So we're very honored to have Mr. Dexter joining Sesameed Education and be our head of university guidance. So without further ado, Mr. Dexter.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you to all the parents who've joined. It is my pleasure to spend today with you. We are going to be talking about a very interesting topic, in my opinion, when it comes to counseling students and thinking about the link between defining purpose so that students are able to craft their college applications, but also navigate their way through high school, utilizing a sense of purpose as a guide stick, so to speak. And so today I'm hoping that this will not only be informative for students who may be on the call, but also for parents in general. So just some housekeeping. We will be recording the session today, but it is an interactive session. So please, whomever is on the call, do participate when called upon. I think that this is really a great opportunity for us to learn together and really come together as a Sesameed family and think about how purpose can really define how we shape out our future, right, through youth in particular. So as Daniel mentioned, my name is Dexter Padiachi, and my background has been in education for over a decade at this point, both on the university side, but also as a counselor at the African Leadership Academy. I also spent some time in Chengdu in Sichuan province in China, which was really a great experience for me learning about higher education within an Asian context as well. So I'm really privileged, I would say, to just have the experiences that I've had thus far and hope to bring those experiences together through Sesameed to serve a wider audience and not solely the students that I served before while being at African Leadership Academy. So to start off with, we're starting with a bit of an icebreaker. And in the chat, Kate shared with you a link to something called Menti. If you have your cell phone, I'd really like for you to pull it out right now if you've joined on your laptop or computer. And you could either go to menti.com and use the code on the screen, which is 169771313. Alternatively, you can just click on the link in the chat. And the purpose of this is to just get a starting point I would love for everyone in the group to share one or two words or a short phrase that best represents how you define purpose. And the idea here is just to get a feel of how we are thinking about purpose currently. And even if you are a parent, it can be related to your own understanding of defining purpose. So, for example, you could think about adding a word like fulfillment or goals that might be aligned with your idea of how you define purpose. So I'm just going to spend a minute and a half to 2 minutes to have everyone just populate and insert their responses to the question on the Menti. And hopefully we can come together and have a collective definition on purpose. I can only see Daniel contemplating purpose. I'm hoping that everyone is as contemplative at this point. A calling, meaningful, fantastic. I'm liking what I'm seeing already. A life goal, fantastic. Passion, intention. I really love the word intention because that's what we want our youth to be. So the students that we serve, we really want them to be intentional with the way in which they think about this particular program as well as their future. What I want in life. That is so important because sometimes we may think that what we want in life could be something material. However, purpose can be a much more fulfilling experience other than just something that is material in nature. Great. So I think that we can move on at this point. Thank you all for participating. So today's outline, what we basically going to do is try and understand what purpose means, particularly within the context of supporting students and guiding them through the process of building competitive profiles for university applications, but also in thinking about the soft skills that students need to develop at this stage. We're also going to talk about the impact of purpose by using some real life examples of leaders who have really exhibited strong sense of purpose. In addition to that, we're going to do an exercise where students will engage in thinking about how they're able to link their academics and their activities with their defined sense of purpose. And then finally, some notes on crafting a personal purpose statement. And that can be a homework exercise that students engage in after this session. So parents, I hope that you're taking notes so that you can work with your children if they aren't on this call today on crafting a personal purpose statement. So in terms of defining purpose, I think that at its core is a motivating aim. So when we think about purpose, we oftentimes will think about intrinsic motivation. What is it that guides the decisions you make and also influences how you act? I think that that is really important. Purpose is also pivotal when it comes to students having the opportunity to think about how their careers might align with something that is beyond them. So we ask students to take a step back and think about the overall context and the impact that they want to make in life. And then through that lens, think about the opportunities that they will engage in when it comes to university or high school. What are you doing academically? What are you doing in terms of extracurricular activities? How does that then align with your future career goals that you set for yourself? And this happens both in a personal context as well as an academic context. And this is really important because we want students to be able to set goals that align clearly with the purpose that they have articulated for themselves. Of course, with the help and support of coaches or counselors as well as parents, because this is not a simple process. And it's also important to note that purpose can change over time. So now we're going to go into another activity and just I'm going to be throwing it out there. What do you think some of the benefits of having a purpose are? And I'll give you again a minute and a half to 2 minutes to just share your responses. The Menti should automatically update. Absolutely. Purpose can be a guideline when it comes to thinking about the goals that you're setting for yourself. What's interesting is that I think that oftentimes we solely think of purpose in a very theoretical sense, or sometimes even spiritual sense, where purpose is something that needs to be grand, it needs to be large. But what about purpose being framed or thought about as something that's very tangible? So while it is definitely something to look forward to during the journey, how do we think about what that end goal is and sort of work backward in thinking about this is my purpose, how do I achieve it over time? I think that these responses are definitely taking us in the right direction of this particular presentation. So I think that I am in good company because all of you are experts on purpose, or so the responses will say. Allows clarity. I really love that particular response. Being intentional, being clear. And so now we can think about how the defining purpose actually has a very clear link when thinking about the impact of purpose overall. Great. I think that we can move on, but please, if you have other ideas on it, do share it in the chat as well. So when it comes to thinking about students particularly and how we use purpose through a counseling philosophy to ensure that students are progressing through their high school experiences as well as in terms of college readiness, is that we want students to have a clear purpose. What the research shows is that students who have a clear sense of purpose tend to excel academically. If you have clear goals that you've set for yourself and you have a good understanding of the impact that you'd like to make in the world, that motivates a student intrinsically. Instead of solely focusing on the grade that a student will get or the GPA, this is a different approach that says, I, as the student, know that focusing on these particular subjects or this particular course is going to propel me forward in the future. It's going to make me stand out. It's going to give me the knowledge that I need in the here and now in order to be successful in the future. In addition to that, as a counselor for the past 7+ years working at schools and as a consultant, in terms of activities, students who are motivated and driven by purpose tend to focus more on developing their skills within a particular activity. In addition to that, they definitely take on leadership roles. They are not doing a particular activity or engaging in a particular competition solely for the benefit of adding it to a resume, but rather it leads to them learning about themselves and exploring different types of thinking, engaging with people, and it opens up a door to curiosity. And I think that this is what's really important because as adults, sometimes we may lose our curiosity as we become stuck in what we know or what we think we know. However, I believe that a sense of purpose tends to push us to constantly be curious, wanting to know more about ourselves, wanting to know more about the world. In addition to that, I think that purpose really stems through when it comes to thinking about the narrative of an application, into crafting a personal statement, into thinking about what you are including in a college application and what you may not include in a college application. And if a student is able to clearly articulate their purpose, that means that they've taken the time to develop a strong profile, but not only a strong profile, they've built up a personal brand that says, I am Dexter. I am passionate about youth development. And my passion for youth development has led me to becoming a counselor that is working with young people across the globe, giving them the skills that I believe are necessary for them to really excel in the future. And I think that these are key takeaways as we think about the impact of purpose. It's not just my opinion. There has been quite a bit of research on the idea of purpose, and I think that it's becoming more and more popular, especially since a lot of organizational psychologists are also thinking about these questions of purpose and how to drive impact as well as productivity within their organizations. But when focusing on adolescence, I think that what I've highlighted on the screen at the moment, research done by Kendall Cotton in 2010 really highlights that adolescents who have a sense of purpose tend to exhibit greater psychological well-being, optimism, and a stronger sense of identity. I think that if all of us in the room here were to reflect on how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive our role in life, part of the confidence that we bring into a workspace or that we bring into discussions on topics that we are passionate about really speaks to that sense of purpose and how it aligns with what we do on a daily basis. So, purpose, again, is not a theoretical concept, it's a way of being. And this is what we hope to establish and encourage within the students that we work with. In addition to that, a study by William Damon at Stanford University found that students tend to be a lot more focused and set higher academic goals. If you know that you want to do something and you have a clear plan and guideline, you've established a pathway with a mentor or a coach or a parent even, it will motivate you to want to be the best in everything that you do because you're able to draw a connection between what you do and what your purpose is. And I think that is really critical and key as well. And then finally, research from Anthony Burrow at Cornell University highlighted that students have higher levels of well-being, life satisfaction, and career success later in life. So I know that we do have some parents on the call, as well as some of the members at Sesameed, and I'm pretty sure that many of us can think about decisions we've made that were perhaps not aligned with the purpose that we've articulated or defined for ourselves, and how that negatively impacted us in terms of growth that we may be experiencing, right? And so the idea here is to ensure that students are able to be resilient despite decisions that they might make that do not align with their overall purpose, but rather really speaks to an ecosystem of thriving. Regardless of what you experience, if it's aligned with your purpose, you are willing to go through the difficult times as well. From my personal experience, I know that becoming a university counselor was not an easy feat. There was a large gap in my knowledge at the beginning of my career. However, youth development was so important to me, and getting students into great universities was very meaningful. I would spend late nights working with students on essays. Every application season, I am up until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., either working with students directly or working on my recommendation letters to ensure that students have the best possible chance of getting into top tier universities globally. And so I do think that despite challenges that we might face, having a clear sense of purpose enables us to push forward and go beyond. And so with that, I'm pretty sure that most of you on the call might know Jacinda Ardern, who was the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. And I've been thinking a lot about Jacinda Ardern and how she has really emerged as such a phenomenal leader. And through reading different news publications and thinking about the way that Ardern has portrayed herself in the public eye and stood up for what she believes in, I took a seat and I thought about how would I, from an outsider perspective, define Jacinda Ardern's purpose. And I came up with a sentence. Hopefully, Jacinda Ardern never sees this, or if she does, she agrees with it. But from my perspective, I think that Jacinda Ardern's purpose is to lead with kindness, empathy, and a commitment to improving the well-being of all citizens, particularly focusing on social equity, climate change, and mental health. So we have this statement that speaks to an idea of purpose, and we have values embedded in that, but also specific causes that Jacinda Ardern might be interested in tackling. So the values are kindness, empathy, and a commitment to improving well-being. So a commitment to society. The action is around social equity, climate change, and mental health. So let's test this theory when we think about Jacinda Ardern's tenure as Prime Minister of New Zealand. So one of the first things that came to mind was leadership during crisis and how Ardern responded to the Christchurch mosque shooting. It definitely made headlines globally. In South Africa, we were talking about the way that Ardern approached this. And I think what really stood out to me is that her ability to emphasize unity and support despite differences or in light of differences really stood out to me. It was a championing of diversity in the truest form. In addition to that, I think that as a leader, there was no finger pointing, but rather thinking through how have we got into this place and how do we move forward? So clearly, if we go back and we think about this, we can see empathy and we can see social equity. No person or group is left behind. In addition to that, what I found really fascinating and got me excited as a counselor, having worked with youth and organizations for over a decade, was this idea of the well-being budget. I don't think that many governments think in this way, but what resonated with me, I would say, is that beyond economic growth metrics, how do we think about people's happiness? I remember at Amherst College taking a course in economics called Consumption and Happiness, and the link between economics and the way that people engage with society, broadly speaking. And for me, what was really great is that her commitment really went beyond what we would typically think of as an economic strategy and put to the forefront mental health. So well-being became a critical part of the budget that Jacinda Ardern created in 2019. And then finally, it goes without saying, her commitment to climate action and climate change, the injustice of climate change, I think has been something that resonated globally. Ardern really pushed forward, and I think it might be the context within which she governs. New Zealand is definitely impacted by climate change. And so in thinking about how climate change is partly a moral obligation of the world to tackle, I think that this was really important for her leadership style. And it resonates again with that overall idea and sense of purpose. And so climate action became something that she will always be remembered for, given the advocacy and the measures, the actual policies that she put in place when it came to thinking about climate action and combating climate change. So now this is not necessarily an interactive activity right now, but what I would like you to do, if you have a mobile phone, if you have a piece of paper and a pen with you, I'd like for everyone to draw two circles, one that says academic and or personal interest, the other one that says purpose. So on a large piece of paper or on a screen, a whiteboard of some sort, if you're able to write down academic and personal interest and purpose, those two circles should be sitting side by side, but separate at the same time. I wish there was a way that I could check that everyone was actually doing this, because I think it's a very meaningful activity. Next, what I would like for you to do is in smaller circles around the larger circles, write down your academic and personal interests and connect them to the large circle. So for example, if I were thinking about this, my academic interests include literature, specifically African literature. It includes psychology. It includes education, broadly speaking, and education policy. Some of my personal interests are reading, and I'd even say cooking. I have a deep passion for cooking. On the other side, when it comes to smaller circles on the purpose front, I want you to write down some values or ideas that align with your purpose and connect them to the circle that say purpose. So, for example, community is really integral to me. And that is something that has always been a part of my guiding light when it came to decisions that I made. In addition to that, diversity is really important. And as I've mentioned multiple times in this particular presentation, youth development is something that is an idea that I am really passionate about as well. So what you should have on your screens on your page right now are two large circles that says academic and personal interests, and the other one that says purpose. Then you have smaller circles around those that either have your interests or your values and ideas. Now, the next part of this is thinking about how the smaller circles connect with each other. As I've been giving myself as an example, cooking, community. I'm able to draw a parallel and a connection between cooking and community. Because one of the ways that I engage with my family and my friends is having them over at my house and feeding them a meal that I've made. In addition to that, I have a deep passion for youth development, and I've chosen education as the way that I would achieve youth or achieve a contribution to youth development overall. And so I'm hoping at this point you're able to connect your personal and academic interests to some of the values and ideas that you hold really close to you. And that to me is a very simple way, but impactful way that every student should actually engage in to create the connections between what they do and who they are. We oftentimes think as the values and ideas that we hold as who we are, and sometimes we have a tendency of separating it from our day to day. And what I'm asking us to do in thinking about purpose generally is that we start connecting the dots to see where there are connections, and perhaps you find an idea or a value that you hold really deeply, but you don't have an action or an interest that aligns with it. It gives us the opportunity to explore more, going back to one of the initial points that I made around curiosity. So if you have a value or idea that is important to you, but you don't see anything that you do or an interest that you're currently engaged in, it's time to find ways to actually work and contribute to the values and the ideas that you hold closely to you. Perhaps it's also true that you have an interest that is a genuine interest, but you can't seem to find the idea or the value that it connects with. What I would then recommend is that you take some time and think about, what do I achieve through this particular interest? And through the reflection process, you'd be able to articulate the values and ideas that are embedded in what you do. So it's connecting who you are and what you do in a very meaningful and intentional way. Intentional, using a word from before, in order to gain clarity, using another word that came earlier from the participants on the call, so that intention and clarity really sits side by side, so that what you're doing is a true representation of who you are. And this enables students to build strong profiles that they are comfortable sharing with others. In addition to that, it leads to a larger idea of building a personal brand to say that I am Dexter. When I speak about education, when I speak about literature, I get excited and I take each opportunity as a learning moment. So I don't enter with an arrogance or an ego to say that I am the best at this particular topic, but I try to create learning environments, staying curious, staying hungry for knowledge all the time. And that is the intrinsic the intrinsic motivation that purpose really drives within students. And so this is an exercise. We will be sharing the slides, but we won't be doing it right now. I just want to walk you through it. Parents, if your children are not on this call, if there's one key takeaway, I highly recommend that you do this exercise with your kids. So, the step one of crafting a personal purpose statement is to identify what you love doing. So, what activities, subjects, or hobbies bring you joy and make you feel most alive? Think about what you enjoy doing, even if no one asks you to do it. So, just sit with that prompt. Try and be as expansive as possible. Don't narrow your child when working through this particular prompt. It could be 3 pages. Just use this as an opportunity to share a lot of information. The next step is thinking about your strengths. What are you naturally good at? Consider skills, talents, or qualities that others often notice in you or that you take pride in. And this is where that relationship and ecosystem of student, counselor, and parent becomes really important, because oftentimes students don't see their own skills and strengths. And we are there to tell them, when you did this one thing this one time, it really highlighted that you are a critical thinker. Perhaps it's the way they approached a problem that highlighted a great ability to think analytically about problems, generally speaking. And then finally, thinking about how do you want to help others? Because while I said that purpose is oftentimes seen as this very theoretical or for the social good thing, I oftentimes think that purpose cannot be without that element as well. What is the contribution that you want to make to the world or to help others? Even if it's not explicitly to help others, what you do has a ripple effect. And thinking through what that contribution looks like, I believe, is really integral when it comes to developing students. When a university asks a student for a personal statement, they're not solely asking for a response to a prompt. What they're looking for is trying to understand how a student thinks and what experiences have helped them develop this way of thinking. And then the next level of that is a question that says, so what? So what if this is the way that you think? What is the impact that you want to make in the community that you are part of, in a future community, within a particular discipline, within a particular industry, right? So thinking about that bigger question of how do you want to help others is really important and integral to thinking through the idea of purpose. And so for next steps, I really want all of us to sit with this presentation. It was brief, but I'm hoping impactful when it comes to understanding how purpose can be a map to understanding yourself and understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because purpose really is that integral thing that stands out and says that this is who I am. And my journey and the education that I am seeking out is clearly linked to an understanding of the challenges I see in the world and my commitment to wanting to change that, to solve the problems that I see. And with that, I now open to any questions that parents or students may have on the idea of purpose or anything that I shared in today's presentation. It should be on your Menti as well, but also feel free to share it in the Zoom chat. I'm open to answering questions at this point. And I'm hoping that this was helpful.
And I would like to uh, mention further to the parents over here. Um, this is how we teach our students. In a similar way as how Mr. Dexter articulated um, the, the reason for coming up with a purpose and how to help a student derive his purpose. This is all linked together when it boils down to university application. When a student gets to grade 12 and have to apply for university, they have to start reflecting upon the last 3.5 years in their high school and start thinking through how all that join connect, how those experiences connect to one another to form a grand picture for life, upon which then you start writing your personal statement. So all this is all linked together. And so we're not just talking about purpose for the sake of talking about purpose. Yes, in and of itself, they are important in life. That's what we believe in. I teach life coaching, so I firmly believe in that. But it's not just to talk about it because it's a good thing to talk about. It has real life impact on how strong a personal statement will become um, because of the presence of purpose. The teenager is much clearer in terms of what they are after, and it will affect their entire 3.5 years of the time at high school from grade 9 to the first half of grade 12. You have 3.5 years. So what are the type of activities that you do? You don't just join an activity so that you look good on your resume so that you can maybe get into a good university. A good university is looking for good student, not a CV. All right. So a good CV should be a result of a strong student having a strong purpose and then piecing together different activities for that purpose. So therefore, for students entering into grade 9 or grade 10, we do spend time helping them craft out their purpose. And the purpose can change over time. Uh, in our classes, we're teaching groups. We're deliberately teaching groups so that our students can get a chance to interact with the other students and get inspired by each other. And so we're hoping that our students will be able to gradually develop their purpose during their grade 9 and grade 10 years so that they will become a lot more intentional when engaging in different extracurricular activities. So all these is not just good because it's altruistic, is good because it's practical. It will lead into much stronger personal statement. So without further ado, I hand the platform back to everybody. See if anyone has any questions for Mr. Dexter.
We do have one question that I think is a really great question. And you sort of touched on it already, Daniel. Often someone's purpose in life changes over time. How can we be consistent? And I think what's the important thing here is not to remain stagnant. Purpose should not pigeonhole you to a certain extent. It should open up a door that makes you ask questions consistently, right? And so if your purpose changes, that is totally fine. At the age of 14, 15, 16, at the age of mid 30s for me, I'm still refining and defining what purpose truly means and what my purpose is. And purpose can change over time as well. And so it's not something that you are locked into a contract with for the rest of your life. What's important, though, is that you maintain that intentionality when it comes to thinking about the impact that you want to make in the world, because that is where intrinsic motivation stems from. When you're able to see a clear goal or a clear end of the line and impact that you want to make, that pushes you and propels you forward. And I think that that's what we want to instill in students, is having that sense of purpose so that they are pushing themselves at any given moment. When thinking about something like debate, for example, perhaps the student's purpose is to tackle some social issues that they see. And the way that they do that is through debate. That will push them and propel them to be the best debater that they can be, joining a national team, joining a school team, refining their research skills. And that's what universities really want to see when it comes to a student profile. How have students gone above and beyond in order to showcase who they are?
Any further questions or comments? All right, if not, this is it for our August webinar. And I would like to, on behalf of the team, I would like to thank the audience one more time for all those parents who took time out of your vacation, out of the summer holiday to come this evening to attend our webinar. Thank you once again. So you know, these webinars will take place once per month, rain or shine. Please, for next month, feel free to bring it spread the word around and bring in as many friends as you like to make it better. We next month is also the beginning of the academic year, so we'll be having some discussion, having some topics which are related to how students should begin the year to have a successful start. So stay tuned. We'll be releasing the topic shortly, and welcome to bring in more parents to come next month. So without further ado, thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you everyone for joining.